Part 1. Why the Truth is Your Greatest Adventure. When we talk about motivation, about what really drives us forward in life, there's this really interesting divide in how the brain actually rewards us. Technically, there are two main types of reward. The first one is what's called consummatory reward. This is the reward you get when something ends, when the story reaches its climax and everything stops. Think about an orgasm, for example. That's a consummatory reward. It's intense. It brings the whole behavioral and emotional arc to a halt. It's final. But here's the catch. It's over just as fast. The journey ends. Then there's the second type, dopaminergic reward. This one's a bit different, and it's a lot more powerful when you understand how it works. Dopaminergic reward is about movement. It's about progress. It's the sense that you're getting somewhere, that you're moving closer to something meaningful. That's what Robert Sapolsky was referring to when he talked about the dopamine system being wired for advancement. And here's why this matters. If you want to feel truly engaged in life, if you want focus, drive, purpose, what you're really looking for is the kick that comes from progress, not from the finish line. That's dopamine at work. This is exactly why stimulant medications like amphetamines are used for kids with ADHD. Those meds tap into the dopamine system. They help you lock onto a goal. They boost focus because that chemical signal says, hey, we're going somewhere important. But there's a downside, too. See, the dopamine system is powerful, but it can overlock you. That's what happens when a kid on Adderall spends 5 hours reorganizing their closet and can't stop to move on to the next task. Dopaminergic drive is all about pursuit, so you better make sure you're pursuing something worthwhile. And that brings us to a really important insight. Pursue the highest goal you can manage. Why? Because the higher the value of the goal, the stronger the dopamine kick from every step you take toward it. Now, there's a balance here. You don't want your goal to be so far out of reach that it becomes demoralizing. Like, let's say your goal is to walk to the moon. Ambitious, right? But good luck seeing any meaningful progress. You can walk for 80 years and still be in the same place. That's not motivating, it's exhausting. So, here's the formula. Pick something that's extremely meaningful but also attainable in increments. You want that constant hit of, I'm getting somewhere. It's the combination of those micro successes that lights you up and pulls you forward. And this is part of why people throughout history have established a relationship with God, or at least aimed toward some transcendent ideal. Because if you're going to go through life with momentum, you need to have something at the top, something you're moving toward that never quite ends, something perfect, but also getting better. Think of that as your own version of heaven. Not a static paradise, not a finish line where you sit around in a hot tub eating cake. That's Dostoevsky's warning right there. If you gave humans nothing but comfort, pleasure, and sex, we'd tear it all down in a week just to have something interesting to do. We're not wired for endless indulgence. The goal can't be static. It needs to evolve as you do. A heaven that recedes as you approach it, something that remains just beyond reach, not to frustrate you, but to guide you. You see this in music all the time. A great piece of music is perfect in structure, yet it keeps getting better as it unfolds. That's what keeps us listening. That's what keeps us alive. Now, let's shift the frame a bit. Look at the biblical story of Abraham. At the beginning of his story, Abraham has it all. He's got status, family, wealth, comfort he's taken care of. But at age 70, the voice of God tells him, leave everything you know. Step into the unknown. And what does Abraham do? He goes. He gives it all up and heads towards something he doesn't fully understand, something undefined but deeply meaningful. As he travels, each sacrifice becomes harder, each step riskier, but each one also brings him closer to the person he's meant to become. Abraham isn't just reproducing biologically. He's reproducing a way of being, a sacrificial pattern that creates better conditions for his children and their children and their children's children. That's the story. He's setting the foundation for generations because he chose to give up short-term comfort for long-term meaning. And that applies to every one of us. The things you sacrifice today, your distractions, your addictions, your excuses, they're not just about you. They're about what you're making possible for others down the line. That's a big responsibility, but it's also incredibly empowering. So if you're wondering where to go or what path to follow, start with this. Follow what's true. And yeah, the truth is uncomfortable. It's difficult. It doesn't always give you what you want, but it gives you the adventure. Truth and adventure are the same thing. Think about it. To speak the truth is to let go of the outcome. It's to say, I don't know what's going to happen when I tell you this, but I'm going to say it anyway. That's risk. That's unknown. And that's what makes it meaningful. If you could predict the consequences of every choice, it wouldn't be an adventure. It would just be a checklist. Real adventure starts when you step into territory where the outcome isn't guaranteed. Just like real truth starts when you stop playing safe. So what does Christ say in the Sermon on the Mount? He says, aim up. Put the highest thing you can imagine at the top of your life. Treat others the way you want to be treated. Then show up for the day in front of you. That's it. You get the frame right. You get the day right. You live honestly. You tell the truth. And every step you take becomes one more movement toward that heaven that never stops unfolding. Part 2. The value of small victories and why nothing well done is insignificant. So let's say you're doing all the right things. You've chosen a goal, you've aimed up, you're committed to walking towards something better day by day. But then the voice creeps in. What if none of this matters? What if I fail? Here's the truth. No one really tells you. Even if you fail at the goal, even if you don't get the thing you were aiming for, you still come out ahead. Why? Because along the way you built discipline, you built skill, you built the kind of perspective and wisdom that changes how you approach the next thing. That's what it means to store treasure in heaven. Not in money, not in fame, not in likes or followers, in character, in ability, in awareness, in strength. Because here's what people forget every single time you choose to do something well, especially when it's inconvenient. You're laying a brick in the foundation of who you're becoming. Even if it seems small, even if no one sees it, nothing well done is insignificant. It's like this: maybe you've been working hard on a goal. Maybe it's a side hustle, a business, a new skill, and then one day it just falls apart. Something outside your control wipes it all out. A market crash, a breakup, a family emergency. And now you're thinking, what was the point? The point is, you're not the same person you were before you started. You've gained experience, patience, structure, knowledge, stuff that can't be taken away. Even if the reward at the end disappears, you're stronger, smarter, sharper. That's the treasure. Let me tell you something people rarely say out loud. Most of the real gains in life are invisible. You can't post them. You can't brag about them. They don't come with applause. But they matter because when you build discipline, whether you're successful in that moment or not, you're stacking skill upon skill, lens upon lens version after better version of yourself. And this affects how you deal with everything, especially setbacks. When you internalize this mindset, something shifts. You stop seeing setbacks as reasons to quit and start seeing them as refining fires. Moments that burn away the useless parts of you and force you to level up. And if you're doing it right, your goals won't just be about you. You'll start to aim for outcomes that are good for others too. That's how you know you're setting high-quality goals. Not just what do I want right now, but what would be good for me and not destructive for everyone around me. A good goal doesn't isolate. It integrates. It connects your effort to something bigger than yourself. And that's where we get into competence. Competence is one of those quiet traits no one really glamorizes, but everyone depends on. It's one of the most reliable indicators of value in the real world. And yes, competence is attractive to everyone. That's why, evolutionarily speaking, people tend to use wealth or status as proxies for competence, especially in dating. Now, hear me out. This isn't about being superficial. It's about survival. From a biological standpoint, we look for competence in a partner because it signals the ability to navigate the world, to create stability, to solve problems. Wealth in this view is just a symbol, a signal that says I can handle things. But here's the real kicker. Wealth isn't the treasure. Competence is. Because you can lose money, you can lose status. But if you're competent, you can start over anywhere. Drop a competent person in the middle of nowhere and they'll figure it out. They'll build, they'll solve, they'll adapt. That's the person you want to become. Someone who's not dependent on the environment staying comfortable. Someone who can thrive in chaos. Someone who doesn't need a perfect situation to make things happen. And to build that kind of person, you need something else, truth. That's your North Star. Not success, not money, not power, truth. Because truth is what unlocks the real adventure. And truth is hard. Truth is uncomfortable. But truth is also thrilling because when you live in truth, you're constantly moving forward. You're not pretending. You're not hiding. You're not stuck in some false identity. You're alive. And if you want to grow, really grow, you have to stop trying to predict every outcome. You have to release the illusion of control. That's what makes life an adventure. If you knew everything that would happen, there'd be no journey, no surprise, no risk, no joy. Living truthfully is the boldest possible path because it means you'll have to face the unknown. You'll have to say things that might cost you something. You'll have to stand alone sometimes. But there's no better way to find out who you are. So, what does this look like day to day? It means telling the truth even when it's easier to lie. It means showing up with consistency even when you feel like hiding. It means doing the right thing even when it's not fun, even when no one's clapping. You do it because it's right. And the more you do that, the more solid you become. You stop being tossed around by every opinion, every trend, every setback. You become the kind of person who can walk through fire and keep going. That's what all this is about. Not perfection. Progress. Not comfort, courage. Not applause, alignment. And when you live like that, aimed at the highest thing you can imagine, grounded in truth, committed to the daily climb, you become someone people can count on. someone others look to for direction. You become a leader. Maybe not with a title or a nameplate, but with your example. And that's a lot more powerful. Part 3, order and discipline become the foundation for freedom. Let's talk about something people often misunderstand. Discipline doesn't restrict your freedom, it creates it. That sounds backward, right? We think freedom means doing whatever we want, whenever we want. No alarm clocks, no structure, no one to answer to. But that version of freedom, that's chaos. That's decay. That's a life that eventually collapses under its own weight. Real freedom, the kind that allows you to move through the world with confidence, only comes when you've built enough order into your life that you're no longer a slave to impulse. See if you can't get yourself to do what you know you need to do. You're not free. If you're a prisoner to distractions, addictions, laziness, you're not free. If you only act when you feel like it, you're not running your life. Your feelings are. And feelings are terrible managers. They're loud. They're inconsistent. They fluctuate with the weather, with your sleep, with the smallest insult or compliment. If you build your life around how you feel in any given moment, you're building on sand. But if you build on discipline, the choice to act in alignment with your values, no matter how you feel, then you're building on rock. And yes, that means some days will feel boring. Some days you'll want to quit. Some days you'll think, why am I even doing this? But that's part of the process. Growth isn't supposed to feel like euphoria every minute. Growth often feels like sweat, doubt, silence. And that's okay. Now, here's where the dopamine system comes back in. Remember, dopamine doesn't reward comfort. It rewards movement toward a meaningful goal. So if your life is nothing but ease, nothing but pleasure, eventually your brain starts to go numb. The spark dies. But when you give yourself structure, when you set goals and take small steps toward them, every day you feel alive. That's not a coincidence. That's biology working in your favor. So how do you create that kind of structure? It starts with the day in front of you. Forget the 5-year plan for a second. Forget the giant to-do list. Forget trying to fix everything all at once. Start with one day, just one. Make your bed. Eat something nutritious. Put your phone away for an hour. Work on something that matters, even if just for 15 minutes. Say one thing you believe out loud, even if it's awkward. That's how the foundation starts, brick by brick. Small acts of order that slowly transform chaos into clarity. And when you stack enough of those days together, something incredible happens. You become competent, not just in one skill, not just at your job. You become competent at life. You start to trust yourself. You become someone who can handle pressure, who can adapt, who doesn't panic when things fall apart. Because you've already been through fire and you kept showing up. Now, here's the twist. Most people don't expect discipline makes life more meaningful, but it also makes it more beautiful. You start noticing details. You stop numbing out. You find joy in small rituals, cooking, journaling, learning deep conversations. You start to see beauty not as some spontaneous explosion of emotion, but as the byproduct of being present. And presence comes through structure. Think about a great musician. Sure, they have talent, but more than that, they have discipline. They practice scales. They keep time. They obey structure. And because of that, they have the freedom to improvise. The same is true for you. When your life has rhythm, when you know your responsibilities, when you're organized, when your calendar reflects your values, you actually have more room to be spontaneous. You're not playing defense all the time. You're not scrambling just to stay afloat. You're proactive, you're calm, you're intentional. That's the irony. Discipline gives you more options, not fewer. But let's be honest, it's not easy, especially in a world that rewards quick dopamine hits over long-term growth. We live in a culture that tells you to treat yourself for everything, to avoid hard things, to indulge every emotion the moment it arises. But that's a trap. That's the kind of mindset that keeps you stuck at level 1 while life passes you by. You want to level up, then get serious about your time. Not in a perfectionist way. Not in a hustle porn kind of way. But in a sacred way. Because your time is finite. Every hour you waste doing something you know doesn't serve you is an hour you can't get back. And those hours add up. They become years. And eventually, they become regret. But if you start honoring your time, treating your calendar like a reflection of your deepest values, you begin to build a life you don't want to escape from. A life that doesn't need constant distraction. A life that feels aligned. And alignment isn't about being perfect. It's about honesty. If you look at your calendar, your budget, your habits, and your relationships, and they all reflect what you say you care about, that's alignment. But if you say you care about your health and you eat junk every day, if you say you want to be successful, but you scroll 5 hours a day, if you say you want deep relationships, but you ghost people when you're anxious, that's dissonance. And dissonance erodes your soul. So how do you fix it? You don't need to overhaul everything overnight. You just start telling the truth. What's one thing you're avoiding right now? What's one conversation you need to have? What's one habit, is killing your progress? Start there. And then do the thing anyway, even if it's hard, especially if it's hard. Because the hard things, that's where the real power is. Every time you do something difficult, something you didn't want to do but knew you should, you build what's called internal sovereignty. You prove to yourself that you are in charge of your life, not your emotions, not your fears, not your past. You. And that's where true confidence comes from. Not fake bravado. Not affirmation quotes, but from knowing that you can rely on yourself. That's what separates the people who thrive from the people who just survive. Part 4. Why purpose beats happiness and always will. Let's dive into one of the most dangerous lies we're told today. Do whatever makes you happy. At first it sounds harmless, even empowering. Who doesn't want to be happy? But here's the problem. Happiness is a byproduct, not a foundation. If you chase happiness directly, you're chasing a moving target that slips through your fingers the second anything goes wrong. You lose your job. Are you still happy? Your relationship ends. What now? A loved one gets sick. Does happiness still help you wake up and keep going? Happiness is great when it happens. But purpose, that's what keeps you moving when life punches you in the mouth. See, when your life is rooted in purpose, your days still matter, even when they're hard. Even when you're exhausted, even when you're not smiling, because you know what you're working toward. You know what your struggle means. Purpose makes pain bearable. Purpose turns discomfort into growth. Purpose says, this isn't meaningless. This is part of the mission. And that changes everything. Let's break this down with a real-world example. Imagine 2 people digging holes. One of them was told dig this hole for 8 hours. That's it. No context, no reason, just dig. Now, imagine the second person was told dig this hole because Underneath is a child trapped in a buried shelter. You might be the one to save them. Now ask yourself, who's going to keep digging when their back starts to hurt? Who's going to keep going when no one's watching? Exactly. Purpose is fuel. And it doesn't just keep you going, it also clarifies your direction. When you have purpose, you don't get lost in every shiny distraction. You're not pulled off course every time someone criticizes you or tempts you with comfort. You're focused, not perfect, not robotic, but focused. And here's the best part. Purpose doesn't have to be some massive, world-changing mission. It can be simple, it can be personal, it just has to be real. Maybe your purpose right now is to become someone your younger self would be proud of. Maybe it's to break the generational patterns your parents never could. Maybe it's to build anything that outlives you. Whatever it is, once you know it, you become dangerous in the best way, because now you have something worth suffering for. And that's not a dark idea. That's what gives life texture. It's what gives weight to your choices. Because when everything is about happiness, the moment things get hard, you bounce, you quit. You say, "This isn't fun anymore," and walk away. But when your life is built on purpose, pain becomes part of the process. You use it, you learn from it, you transform through it. And that brings us to a powerful question. What are you willing to suffer for? Because make no mistake, every path involves suffering. The question is it worth it? The gym hurts. So does being out of shape. Discipline hurts. So does regret. Telling the truth hurts. So does living a lie. Pick your pain. Now, let's get practical. How do you find that purpose if you don't feel like you have one? You start with a responsibility. This is a concept that's gotten a bad reputation, but it shouldn't have. Responsibility isn't a punishment. It's an invitation to matter. When you take responsibility for something, even something small, you begin to generate meaning. You begin to see that your actions affect things, that what you do creates ripples, that you have impact. Maybe it's just taking care of your space. Maybe it's showing up for someone who needs you. Maybe it's committing to finish what you start. That's enough to begin. And from there you grow. Because purpose isn't something you find in a magical aha moment. Purpose is something you build through action, through challenge, through choosing to step up again and again. You don't wait until you feel inspired to move. You move and the inspiration follows. And eventually, you'll look back and realize you've been walking in purpose all along. It wasn't about fireworks. It was about showing up on the days you didn't want to. It was about saying yes when comfort said no. It was about becoming someone that your future self won't be ashamed of. Let's flip it one more time. Do you want to know what happens when people live without purpose? They get bitter, they get anxious, they get depressed. Because without a sense of meaning, life becomes too heavy. It starts to feel like you're carrying a burden for nothing. And that kind of emptiness, it breaks people. That's why we're seeing so much existential despair in the modern world. We've stripped life of meaning and replaced it with entertainment. We've told people, just be happy, but we haven't told them how. The answer isn't more pleasure. It's not more freedom. It's more responsibility. And yeah, responsibility is hard, but it's also what makes you strong. Think about anyone you admire, anyone who's earned respect, not just popularity. They're people who carried something heavy and didn't drop it. They're people who made sacrifices for the sake of something greater. That's what real power looks like. and you can be that person. But it starts with this. Stop asking, what do I want? Start asking, what does the world need that I can help carry? Because when you find something worth carrying and you commit to it, you don't just change your life. You change the lives around you. You change your family. You change your future. You step into a story that's bigger than you, but also more you than anything you've ever known. Part 5. The sacrifice that makes you unstoppable. Let's talk about a word that makes a lot of people uncomfortable: sacrifice. Most people don't like the sound of it. It feels heavy. It feels like loss, like giving up something you enjoy or walking away from what you want. And sure, on the surface, that's part of it. But real sacrifice, it's not about loss. It's about transformation. Because here's the truth. You can't become something greater without giving something up. That's the law of progress. Every version of you that's stronger, smarter, kinder, braver requires the death of something weaker. Maybe that's an old habit. Maybe it's a toxic relationship. Maybe it's your ego. But something has to go. And the sooner you stop treating sacrifice like a punishment and start treating it like a strategy, the faster your life levels up. Let's look at one of the oldest, most repeated patterns in human culture, the hero's journey. You've seen it in every epic story from ancient mythology to modern movies. What always happens? The hero leaves home. He faces trials. He loses something. He suffers. And then through that loss, he gains something far more valuable: insight, strength, wisdom, freedom. The loss is the door to the gain. That's not just myth. That's your life if you're paying attention. You want to become great at something, you're going to have to give up comfort. You want a deep relationship, you're going to have to give up selfishness. You want to be respected, you're going to have to sacrifice popularity. Everything worthwhile costs something, and the price is almost always pain. But not the kind of pain that destroys you, the kind of pain that builds you. Because pain, when it's tied to purpose, becomes sacred. It's the gym for your soul. It tears your old muscles so new ones can grow. And the people who avoid sacrifice, the ones who cling to comfort, who never leave their emotional childhood. They might feel safe, but they're stuck. Stuck in patterns, stuck in regret, stuck wondering why nothing ever changes. But when you embrace sacrifice, you unlock a level of power most people never access. Let's get practical. You want to sacrifice wisely. Then sacrifice what's less valuable for what's more valuable. Give up watching 3 hours of mindless content so you can build the skills that create your future. Sacrifice the ego that needs to win every argument so you can actually grow in your relationships. Sacrifice short-term pleasure for long-term respect. That's the game. The longer the time horizon of your sacrifices, the greater the rewards. But here's where it gets really deep. Sacrifice doesn't just transform you, it transforms the world around you. You take care of your body and suddenly your kids grow up seeing health as normal. You start telling the truth and suddenly your friends begin to question their own lies. You build structure in your chaotic life and the people around you start to feel safer. Your sacrifice creates space for others to rise. It's contagious, it's powerful, and it's desperately needed. We live in a world addicted to shortcuts, to dopamine, to doing whatever feels good in the moment. But when you become someone who lives on purpose, who gives up what's easy to pursue, what's meaningful, you become a beacon. You show people what's possible. And not because you're shouting about it, not because you're preaching or trying to be a guru. Just by existing that way, by living with integrity, you give people permission to rise. Now, I want to talk about one of the most ancient symbols of this idea, the cross. No matter your religion or whether you have one, the image of the cross carries universal meaning. It's a man voluntarily accepting suffering, shouldering it, not because he's forced to, but because he chooses to carry something for others. That's sacrifice at the highest level. And if that's too abstract, look at your own life. The strongest people, parents, mentors, friends, they all made sacrifices you didn't see. They all carried something heavy behind the scenes. That's why you trust them. That's why you admire them. Because they proved over and over that they were willing to bleed for something bigger than their own convenience. That's real strength. And you can build that. You don't need to be born with it. You just have to practice daily. It starts small. You get up early when you don't feel like it. You say no to the party when you have work to do. You stay calm in the argument even when your pride is screaming. You go to the gym. You save your money. You make the uncomfortable call. You apologize first. You do what's right, not what's easy. Each one of those moments is a mini sacrifice. And the sum of those, that's your legacy. Because whether you realize it or not, your life is sending a message. The way you show up, the things you tolerate, the pain you avoid or embrace, it's all shaping the story people will tell about you. And more importantly, the story you'll believe about yourself. So ask yourself, what do you want that story to be? Do you want to be remembered as the person who coasted, who chased comfort, who waited around hoping life would get easier? Or do you want to be remembered as the one who carried the weight, who looked pain in the face and didn't flinch, who gave more than they took, who chose the fire because they knew what was waiting on the other side? That person, they're not born, they're built. One sacrifice at a time. ChatGPT Denoy Part 6. The straight path through chaos is built on responsibility. Let's step into something even deeper, something most people spend their whole lives running from chaos. See, life isn't clean. It isn't predictable. It doesn't follow a script. You can plan everything out, check every box, play by every rule, and still things fall apart. Someone betrays you. You get laid off. You lose someone you love. Or maybe worst of all, you lose yourself. That's chaos. It's what Carl Jung called the unknown. The place beyond structure where the rules stop working and nothing makes sense. And here's the truth, you will visit that place. Sometimes by accident, sometimes because you avoided responsibility for too long, sometimes because life just knocked you flat and you didn't even see it coming. But there's a way through, and it's not to numb it, not to avoid it, not to escape into your phone, your comfort, your addictions. The way through chaos is to face it head on with responsibility. That might sound counterintuitive. Why would taking on more responsibility help when everything's already overwhelming? Because responsibility is the thing that gives structure to the storm. It's the anchor you throw down when the waves are crashing. It's the one thing you can actually control when the rest of life feels uncontrollable. You clean your room when your mind is a mess. You make your bed even if your soul feels untidy. You honor your calendar even when you feel like doing nothing. Why? Because you're teaching yourself that you still matter, that your actions are still sacred even when everything feels meaningless. And here's the paradox. Responsibility doesn't weigh you down. It lifts you up. The more responsibility you take on voluntarily, not forced, not resented, but chosen, the more power you gain over your reality. You're no longer waiting for someone to fix your life. You're fixing what you can, piece by piece. That's how you reclaim yourself. And yes, it's hard, it's exhausting, but it's also clarifying. Because chaos will force you to see what you actually believe, what you actually value, what you're actually made of. And responsibility. That's how you answer back. Let's make this real. You wake up and feel empty. You don't want to move. You don't want to try. What do? You find one small corner of your life that you can clean, build, protect, serve, or nurture, and you start there. It could be washing your dishes. It could be apologizing for something you've ignored. It could be finally doing the thing you've been putting off for weeks. That tiny act of order is not small. It's sacred. It's you declaring, I am not giving in to chaos. You know what that is. Courage. And we don't talk enough about that kind of courage, the quiet daily courage, not the Hollywood version, not the dramatic speeches, but the courage to do the right thing when no one's clapping, when no one's watching. The courage to keep showing up. You want to be dangerous in a good way. Become someone who isn't broken by chaos. Become someone who can walk through the fire not because you're superhuman, but because you've trained your soul to choose order over collapse. That's what maturity is. That's what strength is. And people will feel it on you because the people around you are watching. Your friends, your kids, your coworkers. They're all watching to see what it looks like to hold it together when everything's falling apart. And if you show them that it's possible, if you model what it means to face life with responsibility and integrity, you're not just healing yourself. You're giving them a blueprint too. This is how cultures change, not through politics, not through shouting, but through individuals who refuse to collapse. You become a pillar. You become someone others lean on, not because you asked to be, but because you've proven again and again that you won't run. And let me be clear, it doesn't mean you never cry. It doesn't mean you never fall. It doesn't mean you never break. But when you do, you rise again. And that's what makes you unstoppable. So what's the path forward? Ask yourself this. Where is there chaos in my life right now? What small part of that can I take responsibility for today? What am I avoiding because it's easier to pretend it's not my problem? And then start. Don't wait for motivation. Don't wait for a lightning bolt of purpose. Just start quietly, relentlessly, daily. Because the straight path through chaos is built one small responsibility at a time. And the more you carry voluntarily, the less you fear the storms ahead. Why? Because you've already proven you can walk through them. That's the secret. The world doesn't get easier. You get stronger. Wow. End of Part 6. Part 7. Alignment, Truth, and the War Within. Let's strip it down. At the core of everything we've talked about, purpose, responsibility, sacrifice, order, there's a single force holding it all together. Truth. But truth isn't just about facts. It's not just what happened. Truth, when lived correctly, is about alignment. It's when what you say, what you believe, and how you act all point in the same direction. When they don't, when your thoughts say one thing, your words say another, and your actions say something else entirely, your soul fractures. That fracture, It's why people feel anxious all the time, why they can't sleep, why they feel like imposters in their own lives. Because deep down, you know when you're lying to yourself. You know when you're faking it. You know when you're smiling in public and crumbling in private. You know when your words sound noble, but your actions are selfish. And here's the brutal truth. You can't lie your way into peace. You might convince other people. You might even keep up the performance for years. But you will always know, and that knowledge will eat away at you until something breaks. Now, here's the flip side. When you live in truth, when your actions reflect your deepest values, you become unshakable. Not perfect, not invincible, but real. You no longer need validation. You no longer need to outrun your past. You no longer need to wear a mask to feel worthy. Because who you are is already lined up with what you believe. And that alignment, that's where peace lives. But it's hard because we live in a world built on pretending. Pretending you're okay. Pretending you're successful. Pretending you're not scared. Social media has turned everyone into actors curating highlight reels while bleeding behind the scenes. So, if you want to live in truth, you have to be braver than that. You have to stop pretending. That doesn't mean oversharing. That doesn't mean turning your wounds into your identity. It means being honest. Honest about where you're at. Honest about what you want. Honest about what's not working anymore. And most of all, honest about what you're responsible for. This is where the war begins, the war within, because there's a version of you that loves comfort, that wants to be liked, that's scared of conflict, that avoids hard choices, that waits for permission. And that version of you, it has to die. You have to go to war with your own cowardice, your own laziness, your own need to be comfortable all the time. And no one can fight that battle for you. No motivational video, no podcast, no coach. It's you versus you. The question is, who wins? Do you let the scared version drive, or do you strap that part of you in the back seat and say, "Thanks for your concern. I've got the wheel now." Because you are not your fear. You are not your doubt. You are not your past mistakes. You are the one who can choose what comes next. And you don't need to have it all figured out to choose truth. You just need to start telling the truth today, in small ways. Start with one sentence. This isn't working, or I was wrong, or I'm afraid. But I want to try anyway. That's how alignment begins. And once you taste what it's like to live in alignment, you'll never want to go back. Because alignment feels like freedom, like integrity, like walking through the world without flinching. It's when you can look in the mirror and respect the person looking back. It's when your actions match your vision, not your insecurity. It's when you stop playing small just to keep others comfortable. And as you grow in alignment, something else happens. You stop needing everyone to agree with you. Because when you're grounded in truth, opposition doesn't feel threatening. It feels clarifying. You're no longer chasing approval. You're chasing reality. You're chasing meaning. You're chasing the highest possible version of yourself. And the people who matter, the ones who are also on that path, they'll find you. You'll start attracting people who don't want the mask, people who want depth, people who want to build something real, because truth recognizes truth. Now, let's be clear. Choosing this life won't make things easier. Truth will cost you friends. It will cost you comfort. It will cost you the illusion of control. But it will buy you everything that actually matters: self-respect, inner peace, real relationships, a mission that's worth your breath. So if you're tired of the noise, if you're tired of pretending, if you're tired of feeling like you're living someone else's life, then stop running. Sit down with your chaos, look it in the eye, and say, let's tell the truth now. Not because it's easy, but because it's the only way forward. ChatGPT Danoy, Part 8. The Final Ascent, Sacred Order, Inner Fire, and Becoming Who You Were Meant to Be. So, here we are. Everything we've talked about: dopamine, discipline, purpose, sacrifice, responsibility, truth. It all comes down to one final question. Who are you becoming? Not who you pretend to be, not who society wants you to be, not even who you used to be, but who you're choosing to become right now. Because that choice, it's not made once, it's made daily in how you show up, in what you do when no one is watching, in the thoughts you entertain, in the standards you enforce for yourself, even when it's uncomfortable. And if you're not actively becoming someone stronger, wiser, braver, more whole, then by default, you're drifting into someone weaker, smaller, more bitter. There is no neutral. You're either climbing the mountain or sliding back down. But here's the gift. You get to choose your direction. And the tools we've explored: dopamine as a compass for meaningful movement, discipline as the engine, sacrifice as the fuel, responsibility as the anchor, truth as the sword. They're not just concepts. They're the weapons and armor of transformation. You don't have to stay where you are. You don't have to repeat the past. You don't have to drown in distraction, comfort, and meaninglessness. You can rise. You can become someone worth being. But that journey requires what Carl Jung called individuation, the process of becoming a whole and integrated self. It's not about becoming someone else. It's about becoming you, without the masks, without the lies, without the limitations others placed on you. And this is where things get spiritual, not religious, but deeply personal. Because if you follow this path long enough, you'll come to a place where it's not just about improvement anymore. It's about devotion. To what? To order when the world is chaos. To integrity when dishonesty is easy. To depth when everything is surface. To sacrifice when others choose selfishness. To truth when lies are more profitable. To responsibility when blame is easier. And to the idea that your life matters not because someone else said so, but because you decided it would. This is the sacred path, and like any sacred path, it will demand everything from you. Your comfort, your excuses, your laziness, your fear. But in return, it gives you yourself, your real self, the self that walks with power, the self that speaks with clarity, the self that others look at and say, if they can do it, maybe I can too. That's the legacy, not the money, not the fame, but the way your courage awakens others. And listen, there will still be darkness. There will still be loss. There will still be days when you want to quit. But when you're living in alignment, when your soul is anchored to something meaningful, you won't stay down. Because you'll know this. You are the kind of person who rises, not because you feel like it, but because you decided to be. And that decision, it makes you dangerous in the best way. You're no longer waiting to be rescued. You're no longer outsourcing your meaning. You're no longer letting the world tell you who you are. You've taken the reins. You've accepted the cost. You've embraced the weight. You've chosen the fire and walked through it. And on the other side, you've become the person you were born to be. Not perfect, but whole, rooted, fierce, clear, honest, humble, and completely unshakable. That is the gift of this path. That is the destination. And it's not a finish line. It's a posture, a way of being. So now the question becomes, will you take it seriously? Will you choose the hard path not for glory, but for depth? Will you build order out of your chaos? Will you sacrifice what's small to pursue what's sacred? Will you tell the truth even when it costs you? Will you carry the weight not because you have to, but because you can? Because if you will, then there is no storm that can destroy you. There is no darkness that can swallow you. There is no enemy that can unmake you. You've already been to hell. You've already buried the weaker version of yourself. You've already chosen rebirth. And now you walk with fire in your bones. Not just alive, but awake. Not just breathing, but becoming. Not just surviving, but serving something higher. You are not average. You are not lost. You are not done. You are a man or woman on a mission, and the world is waiting to feel what happens when you finally show up fully. So go, carry the weight, speak the truth, honor your time, walk with courage, and never forget, you were made for this.